National Alliance for Public Charter Schools is the national advocacy arm of the charter school movement. We've been around for a little over 12 years, and our key mission is to foster a great public school system by having strong charter schools. So our ultimate goal is to have a robust public school system where students are thriving and every child is attending a school that fits their needs. Our hope this year with Charter Schools Week is to really spread the word and get more of our schools to invite public officials to visit them. The best way to convince public officials that charter schools are a good value proposition is by inviting these leaders to come to your schools, to meet with the parents, to meet with the teachers, and most importantly, to meet with the students. The more we do that, the more we can demonstrate to folks who we are, what we do, and how well we do it. Otherwise, the data, as you mentioned earlier, is pretty definitive. We have a lot of studies, over 15 high-quality studies of charter schools. We also now have graduation level and data that shows in states like Florida and Chicago that the students who graduate from charter schools do better in the workforce compared to their counterparts in the public school system. And so we have all of this evidence, but it hasn't been enough to convince our opponents. They will never be convinced, but it's not enough to really win the hearts and minds in some instances. The only way to convince people that charter schools are working is by inviting the community into your school and showing them firsthand what these schools are doing and how the fundamental value proposition of giving school leaders more autonomy and freedom in exchange for accountability is a better one compared to a system that tells you exactly how to do schooling, when to start, when to close your school, and how to pay your teachers. And so I think the freedom aspect of our movement is pretty admirable and something that a lot of public school leaders probably would benefit from. I would say the charter school movement's greatest success has been the fact that it has closed the achievement gap in many of those districts where you have had a chance to study the program carefully. It has been able to raise overall student achievement, especially among African Americans, Hispanics, special needs students, and low-income students. So if you look in the aggregate, the performance of those subgroups has dramatically improved as a result of attending charter schools compared to their peers in the public school system. Where the performance is not as definitive is in the suburbs, but it could also be that in those suburbs, parents are making a choice to send their child to a charter school for reasons other than academics. Well, opposition was bound to get loud as you put pressure on a system like our public school system, which has been around for so long with so many constituencies and entrenched bureaucracies governing it. So this was bound to happen as the charter school movement grew in certain cities. What's unfortunate, though, is that this is happening at the same time that our movement has demonstrated time and again that it is a better value proposition for low-income students and a better gateway to getting students to and through college. So it's going to continue in some places to the extent there is tension between the district bureaucrats and between our schools, which are more innovative and outside the box. These tensions are going to continue. And so for our sector, really the thing to decide on is whether you're ready to fight. You know, most of us came to this because we wanted to innovate, we wanted to teach kids differently, we wanted to give teachers more freedom, give parents choice. Most of our school leaders didn't come to this to have a fight with the establishment or with school districts and with teachers unions. And so in order for us to actually get to the finish line, we have to understand that this, you know, the 20-yard line that we're at is critical to our success, and this is not the time to give up. We've actually done everything possible. It's just a question of pushing through, and we're going to need a lot of support from funders, from politicians, from parents, from the grassroots, grass tops, and everyone else in between. I would say Idaho is one of the places that has expanded. Again, it's a small state, so most people are not thinking about Idaho, but they have not only scaled, but they've also done so with quality, which is important. States like Oklahoma are now allowing for charters to be created outside of Oklahoma City and Tulsa, so we're seeing a few new schools created in that state. Colorado has had a few charters in rural communities, but ultimately there hasn't been a real drive to expand charter schools in rural communities. That's partially because the intensity of or the need for reform in inner cities has been more pronounced, but also because you just don't have a lot of families in these settings who are asking for change. In some ways, those districts have more entrenched bureaucracies and a closer connection to the community than you have in inner city settings. So from a political standpoint, you definitely need to make your case and start over from scratch in a lot of these communities. But because we've had so much success in some rural settings, that conversation needs to start, and we now have some proof points to point to around how this could work in a rural setting in a way that benefits the community, benefits the school district, and benefits the parents. The beauty of charter schools is in the fact that it was created by state legislatures to meet the needs of that state. So certain states passed these laws in order to offer a maximum choice to everyone, as they did in Arizona. In other places like Massachusetts, they were looking at it as a small petri dish to see if charters would work, especially in the neediest school districts. And so I don't think there's anything wrong with either model. It's basically what the community wanted in each of these situations. But I do think what Arizona has demonstrated to us is that you can let 1,000 flowers bloom, and that the marketplace can in fact ultimately make good decisions. And because there are so many charter schools in Arizona, the bad ones have closed and the great ones have remained open and replicated. And that's ultimately a good thing. And it can only happen if you allow for innovation, if you allow for entrepreneurs to open a lot of schools. And so it's a difficult value proposition to propose in many instances, because what you're saying is that you're betting on a few of the schools that you're opening to close. So if you have some tolerance for that risk, the Arizona model definitely has demonstrated that after sticking to this for over 25 years or so, you will be able to dramatically make improvements. But that journey is a long journey, and along the way, there are some families who are not going to be happy with the schools that have closed. And so in general, we just have to reconcile that there is some tension here that needs to be addressed. I think at the end of the day, we now know a lot more about what it takes to open a successful school. We also know that we have to close the poor performing schools much faster. We usually can tell if a school is not going to perform well after looking at the data after a year or so. And so very important for us to take lessons from the places that have experimented with this, but also understand that the key ingredient attracting new people to this space is by having a more innovative approach and a less bureaucratic approach to opening schools. And definitely Arizona has demonstrated that, as you see with the results on the NAEP, but also in the individual distinctive innovations that schools like Basis and Great Hearts and others have made, despite the fact that the per pupil allocation in Arizona is less than the per pupil in states like Massachusetts.